Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Horst Lüning. This is my son Ben, and today we have the Laphroaig live tasting.
Yes, and the Laphroaig, we're gonna try today the 10, the Select, and the Lore. And it's gonna be a wonderful live tasting through, I would say, the normal or the standard range, or the, I don't want to say bottom range of Laphroaig.
Not with the Lore.
But it's the beginners from the Laphroaig. So it's not the very expensive ones that we took, but the more entry style whiskies that we have from Laphroaig.
So I suggest, or I think, that most of the visitors here know the name Laphroaig, and that we have a very, very smoky whiskey here on our cask. And I think a lot of connoisseurs will have one or another of these bottles at home. The Laphroaig 10 years old is a million seller, and this should be available close to everywhere in the world. And so I think there will be some followers here, users, visitors, who know the Laphroaig.
So if you have the Laphroaig in your cupboard, it's time to get it and taste it together with us, because it's just fun if we have someone on the other side to try it with us. I want to go into bit of a background about Laphroaig. Laphroaig is a Gaelic word, the original language in Scotland, and it means the nice trough of the of the bay,
shallow bay
of the shallow bay, the shallow in the bay, or something like that. So of the broad bay. So if you come to Laphroaig, you see they have a really, really nice bay, and they are a bit in a slump. So they're a bit on lower ground, and they have a nice bay. So the name is quite telling for the area of Laphroaig. Getting a bit ahead of there, because Laphroaig is near the sea. Where is it exactly? It's on the Isle of Islay, where all the smoky whiskies come from, and it's on the south shore of the Isle of Islay. Here we see it on the map, and you see on to the right, to the east, we have Arran, and then there comes the mainland, and here is the Isle of Islay, and on the south shore, the Laphroaig. There are tons of distilleries on the Isle of Islay, and even Nine and 3 of them are on the south shore, and a fourth one is just being built, or even 4 and 5 are being built right now near Port Ellen. The distillery is a really nice distillery, white houses, pagoda roofs, and warehouses there, but it's not a small distillery. It's a distillery with 2.7 million liters of production capacity per year. And that gives you a bit of a understanding how much Laphroaig whiskey is being produced, and how much Laphroaig whiskey is getting out there into the world.
So there's a nice tale from the former distillery manager Ian Henderson, and he was in his younger ages on a ship, on a freighter down to Australia, and somewhere a few hundred miles close to Australia, he got some sample of Laphroaig from one of the machinists on the freighter, and he said, well, that's it. And after that, he tried to get his job at Laphroaig, and then he worked himself up in the distillery until he was the manager. So, wonderful tale.
Nice story. There are tons of nice stories around Laphroaig. They have been founded in 1815, but they have not been registered since 1826.
This wasn't necessary. So the law just prohibited malt whiskey distilleries in the Highlands, and Laphroaig is on the island, and this is the well, the United Kingdom, where the Lord of the Isles then came to the United Kingdom, and you said it just right, just an hour ago, that the taxman was able to come by boat.
Yeah, it was a naval empire. The United Kingdom was a naval empire, still is. And so all the taxmen were riding by ship. And so they could just visit them and have the tax collected. But I think, were they taxed before in 1826?
I don't think so.
Not much, but there were taxmen everywhere.
They were taxed. I know of the lowland distilleries, they were taxed by distillery size.
Yeah.
And therefore they produced like hell and did not produce good alcohol because they were taxed on just the size of the still.
Yeah, the taxes back in the days were not like you have one big income tax, but everything was like, you are a farmer, you pay this amount on this good, and you are a distiller, you have this size, you pay this amount, and not really what we would call fair today, but back in the day it was just the way things were going.
Are taxes ever fair?
Taxes are never fair. So what was also really interesting is this symbol here on the bottle. Does anybody recognize that symbol here? It's the royal warrant from the Prince of Wales.
So he said...
Prince Charles.
He said, Laphroaig just goes up to the roof, into your head.
Straight through the nose, up into your brain, something like that.
Through the roof of your mouth.
Of your roof of your mouth, straight
right,
into your
straight
brain.
Into your brain.
Yeah, that was in 1994. So actually, there are some distilleries or some brands that have Royal and then their brand name. There's also Laphroaig could do that. They could call them Royal Laphroaig. But they don't do that.
They do that. The name is far older.
The thing is, they have a brand of Laphroaig, and do you want to change the name? No, you don't. Yeah, I think enough said. Let's get into the first whiskey, the Laphroaig 10. And we actually had a video up of the Laphroaig 10 maybe it's already a few months ago. But I still have the first glass of the Laphroaig Twisted. Where's the Twisted Tube? This is the Twisted Tube. This is a cool special bottle from Laphroaig, and you can produce different kind of sayings on the tube by twisting it. It's a cool gimmick, but it's it doesn't affect the bottle. In fact, the bottle inside is just really the same regular bottle as the normal 10-year-old tube.
It has the same barcode on the back, so it's really identical. It's priced slightly above 30, somewhere between 30 and 40. It's 40% ABV, so it's a beginner's whiskey, in quotes, because it's quite strong in your nose. For a beginner, some people say it's stinky, and others, or the tagline of Laphroaig is "you love it or you hate it," and some really hate it because it's so intensely peaty, smoky, and this smokiness is a hospital smoke. It's like disinfection phenols, very, very massive, and then you have this smoked ham taste on it. Yeah, and but it's not harsh, not sharp. It's, in the end, it's beside the extreme smokiness, it's a gentle smell. Yeah, and a little bit comes from the sea, so there's seaweed, and it's like the shore at low tide where the sun is shining on, and you get all those smells from the seaweed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a nice expression. The smell of a low tide beach. Mm-hmm. That's just a Does a low tide beach smell different to a high tide beach? Yes, it does. Because there's all the kelp and all the seaweed going on to the shore, and the water is then gone, and everything is drying in the sun and a bit fermenting and a bit, giving off odors, and that smells a bit like that. Also, there was a bonfire there, and there's a bit of the ash thing going on.
Nikola Mikov said, planning to buy the 10-year-old next month. Never had a smoky whiskey before. Then you will have one of the top smoky whiskies. The others you're able to buy then is everything in between. So it's really, really intense smokiness. But not sharp, not biting in your nose.
Yep.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
What I'm always lacking with a 10-year-old is it has a little too few ABVs. So it's just 40% ABV, and 43 would be better from my point of view. There is a cask strength out there with 57 something, I think. This is extremely intense, but this one you really get the feeling on your tongue when you have the second sip. The first sip is a little bit watery, and it's dominant on the nose. Yeah.
It's an intense, smoky Islay whiskey. It's smoky in the nose, it's smoky in your mouth, it's smoky everywhere. And I don't have it in my brain straight away, but you can imagine why Prince Charles said that, because it's just a very intense, aggressive whiskey with really.
Now I know why you laughed. Florp X-ray. Oh, you can't tell that. No.
What's
Second from top.
It's a wonderful whiskey. A lot of smoke in it, and a good amount of cask, and a little bit of sweetness also.
Yeah, and a false taster salt. Yeah. Salt is in it. Yeah.
The thing is, all the hairdressers and all the barbiers are still closed, and I'm planning to go to a barbier when they reopen, so to get my nice Corona beard. I actually started growing the beard just before that pandemic hit, so I'm really good with it.
So I
good measurement of how long it's going.
I sent you. I gave you for Christmas some beard enlightenment.
I've already done the now you know who sent it to me, the gift.
And the next would be a silvery.
I need to find someone.
Dumbledore. He has this silver ring to bring the beard together.
I want to have a Viking beard, but I don't have anybody who can do the what's it called, braid. And it has to be a special kind of braid. It has to be a horse's braid, because you can't do a braid like a hair on the back with the beard. So you have to have a horse's beard, because a horse's mane is different to a human hair. So, but I'm getting away from the topic we should be speaking here. Okay, so why is that whiskey so smoky, and how is the whiskey at Laphroaig being produced? What is really nice about the whiskey is the malting floors. And I think we've shown it about thrice or 4 times already, because it's just such a nice malting floor to explain the process of malting. And because I've done so much, I could do so much filming and photos in this malting floor. And there's a picture of me how I'm turning the malting floor, and this is how they turn it today. They used to have shovels where they shovel, but then you get a monkey shoulder from all the shoveling. And today they have rakes that you pull through, and that way you turn it. The wet grain that is sprouting and turning all the starch into sugar, and then malt tries to turn that sugar into celluloses. But right at that point where you have the most sugar and not celluloses yet is the point where you need to dry it. And the drying is done, or the big part of the malt comes from Port Ellen maltings. So what I did by hand, this is done by machine in very, very big drums and very many of them. And these drums turn very, very slowly. So everything comes to top and everything turns. So nothing is staying moist for a long time. So there's no mold that can grow on the malts. Yeah, but now we need to dry it. And for drying, we need peat. Yeah, this is peat in its natural habitat. So this is where you cut the peat and you then have bricks of peat.
Yeah, you can see the top layer, which is just soil, and then the brownish, so it's a feet or 1.5 feet on the top. And then in the bottom you see this brownish, and that's the peat.
Yeah. Yeah, the peat is a continuous process. So here we see the peat that is being dried, but the drying is not done fully. So if you'd have to dry a peat fully through, then you'd have to store it for at least one summer behind your house in a rainproof situation. But they don't do that. They just put it out on the fields, let everything flow out, and then dry the top layer of it. So they get a little cover, and that is ready for burning, because they actually do want to have the water in there and to not have it burn so very, very light or very, very fast, because they want to have the smoke. Yeah, this is a close-up of a brick of peat, and you can see it's not very firm and very clay, but this is because this is from a very top layer. So it's just below what you described as the earth, and then this is the top part that you would consider peat.
Yeah.
So very, very rooty.
There's a question from Jeff Whisky. Do you think that hand turning provides a superior product? No. Less quality by hand turning, because you don't find the exact point. You might leave out the corners, and it's difficult to have it done by hand really good.
Yeah, but if you have 10% turned by hand malt in there, then it's just more romantic. And you just feel better by it when you consume it, because it's partly handmade.
What is the difference between Islay peat compared to mainland peat by Flurb X-ray? Well, the peat depends on the speed it grows, and the second is which plants are compressed into the peat.
Yeah, I would say the peat is rather different from what grows there. If you have heather growing there, or just normal bogs of grass growing there, so that would be more of a difference than different regions. But I'm no expert there. I'd have to talk to someone who's really into peat. But I haven't spoken to anybody lately yet. I'd have to take these questions to maybe when I visit Ardbeg again, because the new master distiller of Ardbeg has a lot of knowledge about peat.
Then Jimmy Tube, better yet, what would the whiskey taste like with wood smoke instead of peat? So the wood smoke isn't that phenolic. It's more cold smoke, more bonfire smoke, and the peat smoke is more smoldering tar, ash.
Yeah.
So
but let me continue with how the peat is turning into smoke. They just have a kiln, just a regular kiln where they put all the blocks in and light it. And then you can see this is the start of the fire, and you can already see there's heavy smoke going on in there. That's because there is a lot of water still in these bricks that is a little bit released, and there is not full burning, but there is really a glimmering light going on in there.
Yeah, I hope the the viewers were good in physics, what's the difference between smoke and vapor? Smoke is hard particles or particles in air, and vapor is liquidity in air.
Yep.
So if you're having this water in the peat, then you get vapor, and the peat itself, the roots, the soil which burns in there gives those fine particles. Well, that's a mixture between vapor and particles.
So yeah, but anyway, you get a very dense smoke, and that rises to the top, and you actually take it out to a very big floor that goes, that has all the peat smoke going through the bottom, and then it takes up the water that is still in the malt and evaporates that. So now you have a vapor plus smoke, and a very, very hot and stinky and very wet situation there. So you can't go in with your lens any deeper. And this was the sequence that is always repeating itself, was the only sequence where you couldn't see the start of any fogging of the lens. So it was really hard to take, but it's a beautiful visualization of how peat smoke is getting into the malt. But I think we've used this a couple of times now, this shot. This is done for 15 to 17 hours. And here you see what happens to the smoke, the saturated vapor with water vapor smoke is getting out on the chimney top. And this is the reason why you have a pagoda roof on top of that chimney, because the pagoda roof prevents the rain from getting into that room and re-wetting the malt. That's why you have a pagoda roof above that chimney. So very iconic symbol, but everybody needs it because you need to have a big chimney and you need to have a roof over that. So when you've finished drying it, then you can put it through a malt mill, get a coarse grist, and then you fill it into your mash tun. The mash tun at Laphroaig is 10,500 liters in capacity, and they fill it with hot water of 67 degrees Celsius, and this dissolves the sugar, and also there's still enzymes working there that break up the rest of the starches, or maybe nearly all the starches, into sugar, and out comes a very, very, very sugary substance. Kind of a sugary water, starchy malt water. And you need to cool it down from that 67 degrees Celsius, and the second washing and third washing, they're even hotter. And then you come into your wash bags and put in the yeast. And here at Laphroaig, they let it rest for at least 55 hours, and the yeast is turning all the sugars into alcohol, and you're getting a really a strong beer, 8.5% beer, but it's not a real. Don't expect to drink it like normal beer, because it's very, very, very sweet. Imagine the sweetest Bavarian beer you've ever tried, and then even a bit, and even more, some more, and without any bitterness, because there's not any hops in it. And we'll leave it there, because the next thing is then the distillation. But in between, we're gonna have a little.
Just a question from MoMA. Is it strongly recommended to use an air filter system? Is the air leave the smoke system? So the European community tried to stop the Scottish distillers, first getting rid of the fine dust air pollution, and then they tried to forbid the shipping of casks, of wooden casks, because wood might burn. So they tried a lot, but they weren't able to stop the Scottish industry doing that. So they just hit them by declaring everything, no, not a plant of mass destruction, but a chemistry plant. So everybody, there hadn't been one fire in 50 years, and then the European community came and said you have to have extreme fire equipment everywhere. So they made them to chemistry plants. So this hit them with a lot of additional costs, but the coal firing was prohibited, because there the European community said if you fire the stills all the time and you have the coal fire and then you have the chimney, you have to put in filters, very, very strong filters, and that was too expensive for the distilleries. So they stopped coal firings, and now they have typically natural gas for that.
Yeah, natural gas would then turns into steam, and steam you can control very good.
Natural cask on the
natural gas are for the ones that wanted to have the coal fire, the direct firing.
For the coal firing, direct gas, and the steam heating inside the stills, that is typically made by oil, because from the North Sea the oil comes in.
Okay, maybe the oil in
the boilers typically are oil boilers. Yeah. Oh, we have the next one.
The next one, the Laphroaig Select. Oh, I think you wanted to use...
Yeah, but we show the bottle.
We have little sample bottles for our customers in Germany, so they can try it with us.
One? Next one.
Yep, next one. And here are all the old bottles that we emptied. And you see we have original Laphroaig 10 miniatures, so they're only the Select and the Lore at the very back.
Yeah, the Select is a little bit cheaper than the 10-year-old. It's below 30, has again 40% ABV, but now concentrates more on the cask maturation. So the 10-year-old is typically ex-bourbon casks, used multiple times, and here with the Select we have more casks like peaks, casks, quarter cask, triple wood. So they have a more cask character in it. Well, they tell that. We see. Yeah, this is a lot more fruity than the 10-year-old. The 10-year-old has very, very in the back a little bit of probably a citrus note. Here we have a juicy, fruity note in the front, like, well, a blood orange probably. And of course, smokiness, I don't tell that because it's default. Extreme smokiness is default. And there's more vanilla in it. And the smoke is less than in the 10. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very smoky whiskey. Very smoky. But it's a little bit more fruity, a little bit more friendly than the 10-year-old. And from my point of view, a little bit more intense. But not as mature. So it has
carries no age statement.
Yeah, so it has a little bit more edges to it. But now in the second tasting, it's relatively similar to the 10, from my point of view.
It's not that stinky, sorry to tell that. This is far more phenolic.
Far more phenolic?
I think so. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
There's a fruity component. A little honey note, little sweet honey note. And again, a little bit of saltiness. This is, from the taste, it's more complex due to the different casks.
Wonderful whiskey. A bit more a bit more rough, a bit more edges, a bit stronger, good amount of smoke, and also a little bit more complex with a little bit more fruitiness to it, a little bit more citrus. That was a nice question. Somebody said, would you guess the age of the Select R? And I would say that's a hard question, because they have thrown in many different casks and taken from other bottlings the inspirations. So I would say there's a bunch of different ages in there. Probably the youngest 5. So if you would have to put in something on the label, it would be a 5. But they're probably also 12 years old in there, and 10, 8, 7, something around there. So I would guess the age is a big variation that you wouldn't do in an age statement whiskey.
Yeah. So there's a good question from Gavin Yates. How do you become a master whiskey taster? Well, that's quite easy. I named myself so. This is not an official name, it's marketing. So it's just that I tasted so many whiskeys that I think that I'm a master in tasting, so I gave myself that title.
I think after 1,000 videos you should be allowed to say master taster. But the thing is, do I already have 1,000 videos?
Yeah, and now what I would like to say is that in the future I will call myself the senior taster, and you will be the master taster, because you will have your 1,000 full.
I really don't have a clue how many videos I've already done or how many whiskeys I've tried. I don't have a clue. I've kind of can count how many distilleries I did, but for the tasting videos, no sense of how much it is. Because we have a distribution, we only can count the videos on the channel. That's counted. But
before you started, I had 1,200.
1,200.
So 1,200 was mine, and now I have to be at 1,500 something, 1,800. We have close to 2,000 now on the channel.
On the channel,
1,800 something.
We'll have to calculate that. Maybe we'll find out. Yeah.
So, and there's a question a second time. Be where you are. Having tasted the lore at the end, could you please also make a comparison to the quarter cask, which also has the same amount of alcohol? Yeah, I will. And there was a question as well to the Triple Wood. And at the moment here, we have the Select showing already a little bit of what the quarter cask shows and what the triple cask shows, because here are sherry casks in as well, which is from the triple wood, and the smaller casks from the double cask, no, how it's called, quarter cask. So, but they are, from my point of view, a little bit more complex and more mature than the Select is, and the Select is well below 30 in the pricing, so it's positioned cheaper. Yeah.
Good. So, can I continue with the production?
Yeah, please.
So, when you then leave the room with the washbacks, you come in front of a house with big windows. And also, there's a parking space in front of it. And behind these windows, there are the stills. And here we have a very iconic photo that I recreated. And that's of the stills of Laphroaig. We could have had your photo then in as a comparison.
When I took my photo in 1995, the stills were really bright reddish copper. And then they produced for 20 years and made them hot. And now they turned into brass, dark brass. So they changed in color a lot.
Yeah, this was already 5 years ago, this photo.
So it was 20 years after, yeah.
Yeah, so I was 20 years after you were. So yeah, the thing is now with the stills, you have ones still in the foreground, and you think, yeah, they're about the size of these other 3 small stills. Nope, they're not. My photograph guy, my photographer, took this quite intentionally because it looks more harmonic that way. But actually, if you would step away, you would see, oh, the first one is double the size. than the second, third, or fourth one. And if you look at the still, we had a little bit of discussion on the German channel because they have a capacity of 7,280 liters, and on the label it says 9,400 liters. That's because you have a filling capacity and an overall capacity. The overall capacity usually goes to the very, very top, which you could fill, but it doesn't make any sense because it would boil over immediately. And filling capacity is how high you fill. And that's now a question: how high do you fill your pot still? And you said you fill it up to
the manhole.
The manhole, just
when the
below
manhole
the
is
manhole.
open, and then you fill it, just not leaking.
So I've heard that you even fill it a little bit higher than the manhole, but if I didn't learn it from any university or any textbook how all this distilling works, I just visited tons of distilleries and just always spoke to the guys there that distilling, and that's how I learned it.
And you're a mechanical engineer.
I'm a mechanical engineer.
Quite familiar with piping and plumbing.
Yes, but the tools of the trade and the trade how it's done actually are a bit different from distillery to distillery. So at one distillery you learn this, and at the other distillery, no, we do it the other way around. So yeah, it's
that leads to different tastes. That's it.
Yeah, and that's leads to different tastes and more complexity within whiskies. Now let's have a look at the wash stills. The wash stills are really big, really tall, and they have this watch glass in there. And usually the wash stills are bigger. Here they are of size of 10,900 liters. Filling capacity, probably they could fill them even higher, but then they would boil over. And then we have the smaller stills. They are really the spirit stills. Their shape is really, really important. At Laphroaig, they have a really tight constricting piece. So the flange between the neck and the bottom of the still, that's really, really tight, and every vapor has to go through that, and that creates a lot of reflux and makes the whiskey finer. But the stills are really small, and small stills are usually for a bit of a rougher whiskey, and that's kind of dominating with the Laphroaig spirit. Yeah, the small spirit stills have a capacity of 3,640 filling capacity, and the bigger one in the end has 7,280 liters of filling capacity. And when we look at the spirit still, or the still in production, and you can see it bubbling, and this is how it looks inside a still. Yeah, it's burning quite rapidly. That's inside a wash still. Yes, wash stills burn rapidly because you just want to have one first round where you get rid of all the bits in there. You filter all the rough bits out from the beer, but you still have. Or do you filter them out? Actually, I haven't never asked them this question. It doesn't matter. And after the first distillation, you have no bits in there. These bits don't evaporate, so they don't get into the condenser. And it's very important to not boil over, because if you have any bits going into the condenser, it clogs it, and then you have the pressure rising, and back in the days there were even eruptions and explosions. And if you detect an explosion fast enough, then there comes
coming explosion.
Explosion just before. Then you turn off everything, and then the pressure drops, and at some point you should open the manhole, but if you go past that point, you can't open the manhole because it's under pressure, and then you have a problem that you might come with an implosion. And implosion also sends bits flying, and is also very, very dangerous.
And therefore you typically have automatic pressure valves in nowadays.
Yes.
Where you control the pressure inside the stills.
Yes, so it's all safe nowadays. Back in the days, it was really distiller was a bit of a dangerous
on a distillery
job.
graveyard,
Really? Okay.
In Rothes, there's the Forsyth copper works, and there is a graveyard of old stills, and you see some collapsed stills. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully you did some photos. You have to show me that. I've never seen that. So the first still you come out with about 22% alcohol, and then where you can see the whiskey going through is the spirit save. And this here is the spirit save. On the very, very far left side, what we can't see right here, is just a pipe where the spirit from the wash still flows through, so you can have a look at it if it's any bad, if there's any problem. If it doesn't flow, you have a problem. Then you might have an overpressure. You have a clogging in your system. To the very right, you have the measuring equipment. You have 4 vials that you can turn the lever on the bottom, and then the vials fill up, and you can measure the temperature and density, and you can find out at which percentage you are. And when you want to have the foreshots and the hearts and the feints, you have different cuts where you want to say, okay, now it's time for the real whiskey to come out, because only the center tastes good. And that you do with the middle. You have the levers, and you can turn where your whiskey is flowing and in which tank it should flow. And in the end, you have a spirit tank, and that spirit tank is being filled up, and you come out without the raw whiskey about 70, 75, and it's being diluted down to 63.5% ABV just before filling into the casks. But filling into the casks will come later after the lore.
Yeah, there had been a few questions up there. I remember one said that my video of the fireball is probably the one with the highest visitor count. Yes, it was on Reddit.
Yes.
Not Wall Street Bets, but on Reddit, and then you get that higher. But there is also some views on the Laphroaig, which I took quite early, the Laphroaig 10, and this leads to the next question, which one of the Laphroaigs give the original expression of the Laphroaig best? So it's the 10-year-old, definitely. This is the one which is sold most often, which is the mega seller. And then there was a comment up there that one has 46% in former times. No. From my point of view, from the 80s, beginning 90s, it was always 40%. The time before, I do not know of, but I've seen some older bottlings, and it was 40% because it was just normal quality. And the change over to higher ABV came just a few years ago. It's not so long that the Laphroaig Lore, to which we come then, has 48%, and the quarter cask and the triple wood have higher ABV as well. So they came later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so want to go for the lore?
Yeah. So the lore is a older whiskey. It's said to be older, even showing no age statement on it. It's more expensive. It costs double the price of the others. So in the mid-70s euros, it has 48% ABV. It's unchill filtered, and it contains whiskies up to ages of 15 to 21 years. They say the Scotch Whisky Association prohibited the telling of the older whiskies on the label, but from the marketing you hear what is maybe going on. You can't always be sure that it's right what they are saying. Probably they want to sell more. But what we know is that they have intense casks, sherry butts, quarter cask, European oak. That should give a difference because the normal Laphroaig is typically ex-bourbon cask. So this is the last one.
Mm-hmm. Big question, why pay more for the law than the triple wood? Because there may be some 15 or 18-year-old in there. But you could also buy yourself a 15 or 18-year-old.
And maybe the triple wood is running out.
Is it?
I heard something, but I'm not quite sure if it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here are first fill sherry casks in it, and this you're able to smell. First fill sherry, and a spiciness, a more complex whiskey. Complexity is in it. Yeah, it really shows up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a Laphroaig with a bigger character than the straightforward hospital phenolic extreme smoke.
Yeah, it's a lot more round and mature. Doesn't have that many sharp edges. It still is a bit of an edgy whiskey because of all the marine flavors, the smoke, the ash. So it's still you still feel the Laphroaig going on, but a little bit less harsh. But the intensity is still quite big. And also be careful. These were two 40%ers, and now we have a 48%er.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
So the 48% give it just the right kick, and there's a juiciness, a fruitiness, a darker fruitiness in it, which gives it a more round, more complex note, and it's more friendly to the tongue. And then in the aftertaste there is the European oak. You really feel it, and you won't get that in a young one. So the select, which carries no age statement, probably has 5, 6, 7-year-old whiskies in it, my guess. And here you really feel the older casks which are in, definitely. They might add up with the younger whiskies to give it a more complex and vibrant character, but the old ones are in. Definitely smell them and taste them.
Yeah, I like it. It's more intensity, but the intensity comes with a bit of, I don't want to say softness, I want to say not as sharp edges as the other ones, and more oak, a little bit more spiciness to it, I feel, a little bit of a peppery note going on there. So it's really, I love it. It's a nice whiskey. It's just it really adds to the other one. I don't want to spoil anything, but this is a bit better than the other two.
Reese 9339. Do you detect any chili in lore? Now, as you say it, yes, there's a very faint light. Probably could be red pepper as well.
Yeah, black pepper, red pepper, white pepper. I wouldn't say chili. It's not as sharp and edgy as I would.
Yeah, you're a
say.
specialist in chili. You have your own plants and your own sauces.
I like it. I can still remember I was sitting at my distillery video. I was sitting with the distillery master, and Laphroaig is one of the whiskies where you have really with the select and the 10 at the younger side, they have really sharp edges, not beginner friendly. And when you come more to the older ages, 15, 18, I think I had was it 2025? I think was it 25?
Mm.
And that are really that you get more of a round flavor. It takes off that harshness, that strength that you have with a Laphroaig whiskey. The Laphroaig doing marketing with people that try the Laphroaig whiskey for the first time, and they're all like, "Oh my god, it's so intense." Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Fraser Thistle. How does the lore compare to the Laphroaig PX? Well, I had the PX several years ago. I do not remember exactly, but the sherry influence in the Laphroaig PX was dominant. This is not that strong in this one.
Mm-hmm.
No.
When did the Laphroaig get introduced? Good question. You did it when it came out.
I think it's 2016, 17.
Something around then, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Probably. And the cask strength, yeah. The cask strength was brought back, and what is special with the cask strength is that they mixed the cask in that way that they reach this ABV exactly at the point where they like to have it. Is a wonderful, wonderful whiskey, but it's expensive. So you have the advantage that you're able to reduce the strength, so that you get more smell and taste out of the cask strength. We had that last year. I think we had a cask strength here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think now we're able. We're going to the casks. Yeah.
Yeah,
now
we
we're
still
going to
have a
the
little
casks.
bit of a production left. We're just with new make spirit, and now we're filling that new make into casks. And Laphroaig is actually known for their bourbon casks. 90% of the whiskey is being filled into bourbon casks, and there's a big name at the distillery. It's called the guy is called Ian Hunter, and he revolutionized the business. And he was the one in the 1930s who went over to America and learned from the Americans what bourbon casks meant, and also probably did some trade deals to get these bourbon casks to mature his whiskey in. And he was then also the one who knew about the cask building and everything. So he built these smaller casks, the quarter cask, and introduced them to the Laphroaig whiskey. Oh no, he wasn't the one with the quarter cask, but the distillery uses quarter casks. Sorry, a bit of a false lore there. Yeah, and this is one of the iconic casks. This is not representative of what lies in this warehouse, because this is a 1978 cask, and I think it is being signed by Prince Charles.
Yeah, in 1994 when he gave the Royal Varund to the distillery. I was there in 1995, and they were all just glad, and they had big photographs everywhere.
I think that behind that is
Yeah.
1994.
Yeah.
So they gave him in 1978
to sign. Yeah.
sign. They gave it in 1978 to sign, and it's 1994. Okay. So, but in the warehouse there are tons of casks with up to the age of the year, about 30 years. But the thing is, I think these informations with the 30 years are already 5 years old, though, so maybe they do already have older whiskies lying around there.
There is Flurp X-Ray has a question. Wasn't there a story with Ian Hunter and Steamboat where he first time tried a Laphroaig? No, it wasn't Ian Hunter. Ian Hunter was a manager around the 1930s, and Ian Henderson was the distillery manager up to the year 2000, I think, around 2000. So it was a lot later, and it was Ian Henderson.
Yeah, but he said Steamboat. Maybe there's another story about...
No. That's the same one.
That's the same one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and the warehouse.
Hello to Brazil. Sorry.
And the warehouse from the outside is really iconic. I wouldn't miss this picture because it's really a nice picture, and you know it from other distilleries. Every distillery on the shore has a very white warehouse, and they write their name in big letters on it. And actually, back in the days when they did have steamboats, that was really important because all the boats were just going along the shore, and where do we drop it off? We have to go to Laphroaig. There is written, go drive there. And then they unloaded all their cargo with all the malt and all the equipment and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was back in the days it was really necessary.
No GPS.
So they had to navigate by what they saw and probably by compass and something like that. Yeah. Inside the warehouse, unfortunately you can't really walk through the warehouse. Even I wasn't allowed to go through the warehouse. So this is the only thing you can see on the tour through a fence. You see all the barrels and all the casks stored there, all the numbered casks. And yeah, you see a lot of bourbon barrels, and there's just one sherry butt lying around in the middle. And yeah, this is the warehouse at Laphroaig. And you just wanted to have the sequence of the whiskies.
Yeah, there was a question first. Which one should be, or should you taste a Laphroaig as a beginner? Well, I would say yes.
As a beginner.
don't buy a whole bottle, but try it in a bar. And when you can cope with that, then you're fine for every smoky whiskey. And because this is one of the very, very intensely smoked whiskies. So if you're able to stay there, then you're fine. Others said, well, only with a Laphroaig I was introduced to whiskey. Otherwise, I wouldn't have tasted it.
Yeah,
So
but there's always a bit of a chance that if you'd introduce someone with whiskey and give it to him a Laphroaig, you would just, oh no, not for me.
Yeah.
Can I have a bit of a Coke?
And then which one was a question, which one is the typical Laphroaig? And the typical Laphroaig is, from my point of view, the 10 years old, because it shows the most phenolic smokiness in the Laphroaigs. And that was one of the very widely available. There had been a 15-year-old decades before, and then there was nothing. And so the 10-year-old is what the Laphroaig stands for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. So my favorite hasn't changed. I still have the same ranking as before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, as for you, the Loire is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Then the 10-year-old, and last comes in the Select. And no surprise, this is the most expensive. Then it's the 10, and the least expensive is the Select.
Yeah, and I think this was the first time where we had an exact match from the ranking, because for me it's this is the best, this is second, this is third, but the last two, the second place was a really a hard matchup, but still the 10 is just a little bit, just a smidge better, So, it just feels a little bit more mature.
Yet now it smells a little bit different. Not with the ranking, with the quality, for me, but they all show more caramel, more vanilla in it, and especially the Select shows more of it. But for me, the 10-year-old lives from this phenolic hospital smoke, and therefore I like it the second. This one has so wonderful complex cask aromas in it, so for me it's the first, definitely.
So before we end this, maybe you find a question, but let me do a little advertisement for the next stream. If you want to join us on the next stream is called the Independent Malts Collection. It's about independent malts from different independent distilleries that don't belong to a very big company. And it will be held on the 26th of March 2021 at 8 p.m. Central European Time here on Whisky.com/live, or on the YouTube channel you can find also the video of the stream. So did you find any other questions?
Yeah, Akeem Dream. IBs are good. No, they are not independent bottlers. They are independent distilleries.
Yes.
So they are not owned by a mega global company.
Oh, now you've told something. I wanted to keep as a secret because
okay.
It's called independent malts. So everybody thinks about independent bottlers, but they are distilleries. But don't tell your German friends.
A lot of Germans in it.
Yeah, tons of them. But don't tell them.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I think we're at the end of the stream. Mm-hmm. Thanks for watching. It was a great time. Great thumbs up. Yeah, and great Laphroaig whiskey. I hope you will join us on the 26th. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.